Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial, and today we are working on a restoration project in our World War II radio room that recently involved painting the space green. Now, whenever you go to old government buildings or World War II era ships, you see this shade of green everywhere. So, seafoam green, wardroom green, institutional green, baby puke green. All of these are words for the same color, the shade that we see around us right now. Why is that color everywhere? It's interesting because with gray, when I start talking about medium gray, haze gray, light gray, equipment gray, deck gray, blue gray, there's several different shades on the spectrum depending on what you're painting, whereas everything's more or less the same color of green on the inside of older ships. This was the result of a government study. I don't want to know how much money they spent on researching this, but they did a lot of research back in the 20th century to find out what the most calming color was, and this light green color is what they came up with. And so on World War II era warships, you see the entire interior of the ship, not quite every room, but the bulk of the interior of the ship, specifically living and working spaces, are painted in that color of green. And you see that in old institutional buildings too. On Battleship New Jersey, her paint scheme got modernized in the 1980s. So all of this old green that would have been more or less the same in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam gets covered over by an off-white shade. And in the early 80s, the Navy's interior paint scheme has most equipment painted brown, and most rooms painted this like off-white cream color. And then right at the end of the ship's career, they go through and they basically spray every room in the ship white and repaint all that tan equipment to a light gray color. And so then that was the internal paint scheme for a while. And that's the scheme that you'll see when you come through the bulk of the ship. And that's what this room was painted as until a couple of weeks ago when some volunteers decided to tackle it. This was the main radio room in World War II, and therefore through Korea and Vietnam, before the ship got major changes in the 80s and the radio room was bumped up to the main deck. And at that time in the 80s, it was turned into an electrical equipment room. After the ship was turned into a museum, well, before she had opened, but while the ship was still being converted into a museum, but once the Navy had given the ship to the Homeport Alliance, the Navy came back to take the electrical equipment out of this room. So it's a room on the tour route that was pretty much empty. Over the last 20 years, we've been allowed to participate in a number of what I call strip trips, open houses, shipyard raids, where the various shipyards where reserve ships are stored allow us to come and take parts. And some of those parts that we were able to acquire are World War II era radio equipment. And a lot of these parts come off of the cruiser Des Moines, which was at the Philadelphia Navy Yard for a number of years, almost intact in case she needed to be reactivated. In fact, the Navy looked at reactivating her in the 80s when they reactivated the Iowas. So we were able to get a fairly complete outfit of World War II radio equipment. We had the original World War II radio room, and this is the room where they probably miscoded or misdecoded the famous message to Halsey, where, I repeat, where is Third Fleet? The world wonders. So that probably took place in this space. It's very historically significant. It was otherwise empty, and we had the equipment to put it back in there. So years and years ago, the space was converted into back into the World War II radio room, but the original paint was left up. So, as part of that ongoing restoration, we came through and we painted this space green. There's a handful of other spaces that you'll see that are painted this color green around the ship. The ship's brig, which was removed after Vietnam, we backdated that space, which had been turned into a weight room. The weights were gone, had been bought with the crew's morale fund, so that equipment left when the ship was decommissioned. So that was an empty room. We were able to restore that. So again, we painted it that calming institutional green, like it would have been. And the Chief of Staff's cabin, which is a space up on the O2 level outside of CEC, which was used as a guest officer space in the 80s, we backdated that to World War II after water intrusion caused a significant amount of damage. Typically, we don't gut intact spaces to backdate them. So when you come and visit the ship, she looks mostly like she would have in 1991 when she was decommissioned. However, in a small handful of spaces, if it was historically significant, if the room has already been damaged or emptied, and if we've got the appropriate equipment to reinstall there, we will interpret it as if it were World War II. And a significant part of that is repainting the room to its World War II paint scheme. When this room is fully put back together, we do transmit and receive from here. All this equipment has been brought back to working order. We do use it. Obviously, since we painted and moved everything out of the way, it's not all hooked up yet. Give us a little bit of time. But we've got a ham radio club on the ship. They're the ones who acquired the equipment and have done the bulk of the restoration in this space. They're volunteers, and they come out and transmit just about every Saturday and a bunch of other days too. So if you are a ham radio operator, you can get on and hear us transmitting out of this space and other historic radio rooms around the ship. This space was or is being restored by our volunteers. If you'd like to help them out, there's a link in the description for ways you can sign up and join our volunteer crew. So what do you think is the most calming color? I'm not sure that the wardroom green color does it for me. Which color do you think is most calming? Let us know in the comments section down below. And don't spend millions of dollars on this study like the US government did. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals. We really appreciate the support you guys have given us. Your donations allow us to not only keep making these videos, but continue the ongoing restoration of the battleship. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to support us by donating. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about our channel and our museum. Thanks for watching.